The settlement on Crixar-7 had gone silent 3 days ago. Tessa Hale moved through the abandoned compound with practiced efficiency, her plasma rifle held low but ready. The distress beacon had stopped transmitting 18 hours prior, and Command had sent her alone to investigate. Standard protocol for a Class D world where the dominant species supposedly lacked sentience. She should have known better than to trust xenobiological reports written by academics who'd never left orbit. The compound's main hall told the story in blood and claw marks. The colonists had barricaded themselves inside, but it hadn't been enough. Whatever had broken through had been large, fast, and hungry. Tessa found no bodies, only drag marks leading into the jungle beyond the perimeter fence. Of course, she muttered, checking her ammunition count. 63 rounds. It would have to be enough. The trail led deeper into Crixar-7's crimson forests, where bioluminescent fungi cast everything in an eerie purple glow. Tessa had been tracking for 7 hours when she heard it, a high-pitched keening that made her teeth ache. Not human, not adult. She found them in a clearing, 5 creatures the size of earth wolves but built like something between a panther and a bear. Their fur rippled with adaptive camouflage, currently displaying patterns of distress. The largest one, barely reaching Tessa's hip, stood over 3 smaller cubs. All of them were emaciated, ribs showing through mangy fur. The oldest cub, she would later call him Rin, growled at her approach, but the sound was weak, desperate. Tessa lowered her rifle slowly. These weren't the compound raiders. These were children. Behind them, partially hidden by undergrowth, lay an adult female, dead for at least 2 days from the smell. The cubs had been trying to guard their mother's body, too young to understand she wouldn't wake up. Ah, hell, Tessa whispered. She should have left. Mission parameters were clear: investigate, report, extract. The Galactic Council had strict non-interference policies regarding pre-industrial species. These cubs were technically wildlife on an uncolonized world, but Tessa had grown up on the frontier colonies, where survival often meant bending rules that soft-core worlders would never understand. She'd seen what happened to young creatures left alone on hostile worlds. She unsealed her ration pack. Rin snapped at her hand when she offered the protein bar, but hunger won out over fear. Within minutes, all 5 cubs were eating from her supplies, their distress calls fading to uncertain chittering sounds. Tessa set up a temporary camp at the clearing's edge. Knowing she should contact Command but delaying the call, she told herself it was tactical, better to assess the situation fully before reporting. The truth was simpler. She couldn't stomach the idea of Orbital Command ordering her to leave these cubs to starve. That first night, they kept their distance, watching her with eyes that reflected her campfire like molten gold. She'd seen those eyes before, in the compound security footage she'd reviewed. Adult versions of these creatures had indeed attacked the settlement, but the footage showed why. The colonists had been clearing the forest with plasma burns, destroying hunting grounds. Desperate predators, displaced and starving, the same thing that was happening to these cubs. By the second day, the cubs had crept closer. Tessa had expanded her search pattern, mapping the territory and finding 2 more adult corpses, some kind of plague or poisoning, possibly from contaminated water near the human settlement. The colony's industrial runoff had been more toxic than anticipated. Her rations were running low. She'd given most of her food to the cubs, keeping only enough to maintain her strength for the return journey. The smart play would be leaving now, letting nature take its course. Instead, she taught Rin to hunt. It started accidentally. She'd shot a 6-legged herbivore for her own dinner, and Rin had watched intently from the undergrowth. When she deliberately missed her next shot, letting the wounded creature flee, Rin had burst from cover and brought it down with remarkable instinct. The other cubs learned by watching him. Within 3 days, they were coordinating hunts, their distress calls replaced by excited chirps. Tessa knew she was burning through mission time. Command would send a search team soon, but exhaustion had been pulling at her for weeks, months really. She'd been on deployment for 8 cycles without proper rest, and the human body could only take so much. Her vision had started blurring around the edges, her hands trembling from fatigue. On the 4th night, she finally allowed herself to stop. She hadn't planned to sleep, just to rest her eyes for a moment, sitting against a broad tree trunk while the cubs hunted. But the human body has limits that willpower cannot override, and Tessa Hale had reached hers. She woke to warmth. 5 bodies had arranged themselves around her in a defensive circle, their bulk pressed against her legs, sides, and back. Rin lay directly in front of her, his larger frame creating a living barrier between Tessa and the jungle. The other cubs had positioned themselves at cardinal points, heads up, ears swiveling. They were guarding her. Tessa remained motionless, afraid to break the moment. These apex predators, creatures that would grow to weigh 300 kilos and hunt in coordinated packs, had chosen to protect her while she was vulnerable. They'd recognized her exhaustion, understood her need, and responded with instinctive pack behavior. It was the kind of thing xenobiologists insisted was impossible in pre-sentient species. Rin's ear twitched, and he turned his massive head to look at her. Their eyes met, human and alien, soldier and cub. Some unspoken understanding passed between them. When the rescue shuttle arrived 6 hours later, Tessa was ready with her report. She documented the plague, the cause of the attacks, and recommendations for limiting human expansion. She made no mention of 5 young predators who'd learned to hunt, to trust, and to guard. Some things Command didn't need to know. As the shuttle lifted off, Tessa watched the clearing shrink below. 5 shapes emerged from the tree line looking up at the sky. Rin stood at the front, already larger than his siblings. They would survive now. "She'd made sure of that, ma'am?" the pilot asked. "Command wants to know about potential indigenous threats." Tessa smiled, remembering warmth and trust in the darkness. "Tell them there's nothing here worth worrying about," she said. "Just cubs learning to be predators." But she'd learned something too, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't weapons or technology. It was the stubborn refusal to abandon those who needed help, even when rules and logic said otherwise, even when the ones who needed help had claws and fangs and would never understand the gift they'd been given, especially then.